Well, welcome everyone. Sorry we're getting started a minute late, but we're all here and we're so happy you're here with us as well. Um, my name is Chelsea. I'm with the Eat, Breathe, Thrive Foundation for Eating Disorders. We are an international nonprofit that works all over the world supporting people in recovery. And I'm here with Lydia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lydia Rhino. I'm the program director at the Denver-based nonprofit called the Eating Disorder Foundation. We provide free educational support and advocacy services for individuals as well as family and friends of those that are affected and struggle with eating disorders. We're located in Denver, Colorado, but we provide services for folks all throughout the United States and internationally as well. So grateful to be here with everyone this morning.
Yeah, we're really happy to be here. And we're also happy to be here with Carla and Evie, who I'm going to ask to introduce themselves here in one moment. But just a little bit of one, we would love to know where you are in the world. If you want to drop into the chat, um, where you are, country, state, province. It's always good to know where people are zooming in from. And just a little bit of housekeeping for today, and not really housekeeping, but what you can expect. So how we recover is, I mean, it's really what it sounds like. We bring people together once a quarter as two organizations partnered in this work, who are in recovery, and we're often at kind of different stages of recovery, have really different experiences in recovery to talk about just that, how we recover. And we usually have a theme, and we try to pick questions that come up a lot in recovery that are maybe hard to talk about sometimes or a bit controversial, or there's lots to dig into. And this month, we're talking about, is full recovery even possible? And so that's our theme. Lydia and I will kind of put some questions to the panelists, and we'll give each person a chance to answer. And then if you want to just jump in the chat, and if you relate, you can speak to that in the chat. If you have a question that comes up that you want us to get to, we try to keep an eye on the chat throughout and really bring in as many of your questions as possible. So with that, I guess I didn't say this in my introduction, but I'm in recovery, recovered. I don't get fussed about language, but I'm somewhere on that spectrum. And I have been for, oh gosh, it makes me think about how old I am. So just somewhere between 15 and 20 years, depending on where you put that marker, but a good long while. Um, so either Evie or Carla, do you want to share a little bit about who you are and which organization you're connected to and how long you've been in recovery?
You can go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So, hi, I'm Evie. I'm from the United Kingdom, England, North England, and I volunteer with the Eat, Breathe, Thrive Foundation as like social media and stuff. Absolutely love it. And I've been in recovery for about a year.
I'm Carla. I live in Georgia. I am part of the EDF community. Um, love, love, love Lydia. And I am in recovery after 40 years today for 2 years and 5 months. So
Amazing. Lydia, do you want to start us off with the first question, or do you want me to? Or
If you want to, that would be great. We have the phone ringing here, so I'm
okay,
gonna.
okay, great. Okay, I'm happy to. I think I'm just going to start with our theme question. I think that's a good place to start. What do you think about that question? Do you think full recovery is even possible? What does that mean to you? It is a big question to start with. I give you that. And you can
I
be,
think
I don't know. Yeah. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
I think for years when I was like struggling, I would always have just said, no, I'm never going to fully recover. It's just part of me. And then I started a day patient program and I was like, this is my final chance, like 90 days, you'll see if you like recovery. And I went through it, and when I got to the end of that, I was like, yeah, actually, this is so much better of a life. And it just developed from there to the point where I believed that full recovery was possible. And I still think there's a major reason why my eating disorder was a part of my life and it's helped me develop a lot as a person. And it led to, I suppose, almost better, bigger things. But I am only able to do those things having achieved full recovery, and I wouldn't be trusted to do that if I wasn't able to, and if I was still ill. So I think full recovery is possible, at least it is for me.
I can pop in. Um, yeah, I think it is such a big question. It's something that's like gone back and forth in my head throughout my own recovery, throughout watching my mom struggle with her eating disorder throughout her life. It's been something that's been, yeah, a question. At this point in my life, I can say that I do fully believe in full recovery. I think for me, I use like the recovery versus recovered language, just as for me, it feels like much more of like an ongoing continuation of like believing in and trusting the recovery process, rather than it being something that I see as like a definitive end or like I'm kind of like through it. I do think that full recovery is possible. And I think that it's also a lot of work and that a lot of it is really crappy work to do. But same with Evie, that I feel like it's led me to like bigger and better things and like just opened up my life so much more. Which I think for me, like full recovery is like full life, like in a sense. And like the eating disorder like takes away so many parts of the life experience and really just like, yeah, allowing for full life through full recovery. So that's where my mind is at today with it.
This has been a question that I have like pondered since I was asked to speak on here because is full recovery possible? I think recovery is possible, obviously, because I have found myself there. But I also believe that it's a journey, it's not a destination. I believe that every day that for these past 2 years and 5 months, I've had to work at some level on my recovery. Some days it's more work and some days it's less. I agree with Lydia too about there's so much more freedom on this side of it that why would I go back, But yeah, that's kind of what I have to say about it.
Oh yeah, it's really, really rich answers. Gosh, I think one of the challenges is that we don't really all when we all say recovery inside, we may have really different understandings of what that means. And even in the academic literature, nobody can really agree on what recovery means. Like sometimes they used to measure it in terms of BMI, which obviously has awful issues. And then they had like, behavioral like cessation of all behaviors, and I just go find me a human being that has never engaged in a disordered eating behavior ever. Or cessation of eating disorder thoughts, right? Which is also like, well, how do you measure that? So I think one of the challenges is that it's really hard to define that. And I think it's really different for everyone. Having worked with people over the course of like 10 years, what I've realized my experience is really different from other people's. I think what I would just share about my experience is when I was in treatment, one of the messages I kind of got over and over again is this is something that never goes away, that you always live with. It's always like this dark shadow on your shoulder. And I found that really, it was really difficult to be hopeful about the future with that narrative, just going, God, I'm going to always have this battle. And that's what it felt like of like every time I sit down to eat, which is like multiple times a day, having to battle my own mind. And it made it really difficult to want to recover. What I found was really different from that. And it happened really slowly over time in stages. I would say that weren't always cut like clear cut stages. Sometimes I went up to one and then back, but it probably took like 5 or 6 years before I would sit down at a meal and I just didn't immediately see calories, numbers, etc. And it wasn't a battle day to day. And I don't know what to call that, but it was really different than the daily work, daily grind of working on recovery and it being really hard. Um, and that's only kind of grown stronger as I've gotten older. Although I will say that there's things that can like shake you up a little bit. Like, it's the big things, like loss, grief, all those big ones, pregnancy, menopause, all those big things, big life changes. But I do think I didn't realize there would be a time that it didn't feel like a daily struggle. And I would, if it does feel like a daily struggle to you right now, I wouldn't want to take away your hope that that could, maybe be there someday. There's so many good questions in the chat. I'm just going to steal one if that's okay. Do you ever become comfortable in your recovered body or recovering body?
I love this question. It's something that I think I was talking about recently with some folks, about just like how, like, the process of becoming comfortable in living in a body and trusting your body and developing that safety, of just like how much time it took for me to do that. And I have like this specific phrase that I used when I was in like a higher level of care, and it was when I was like going through a really hard period of being like, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to live in my body comfortably or safely or feel like I can trust what's happening. And I had this like internal dialogue and was like, well, what if I can trust my body? Like, just like that what if question of like, I'm not saying that I can see it happening for myself like in the coming days, weeks, months, years, but what if there's a chance that my body will know how to redistribute the weight, how my body will know how to take care of itself and teach itself how to like handle all the things that are happening to it. Like the what if question, rather than it being something about like anxiety or going down like a spiral of like all the worst case scenarios, I like kind of flipped it into like, what if my body could be better and like be like healthier and stronger and all the things that I would like ideally want for it in recovery. And I really challenged myself to like see that as a possibility, even though it didn't feel like one at the time, because I really was like, I, I don't know. I kind of felt like at a loss with like the eating disorder and be like, well, this isn't doing what I also wanted to do, because I also don't feel safe in my eating disorder body when I was sick either. So it was kind of like a, well, what if things could turn out better than this? And really like leaning into that hope and the trusting the process. And now today I'm about 10 years into my recovery. And I feel very much like the only part of my body that I don't necessarily feel comfortable with is that I want more tattoos. But other than that, I'm like, my body I can live in, I'm comfortable with it. I'm, all of the things. I find clothes that really make me feel like I can involve my self-expression. I dress in a way that feels really good for my body. I like, yeah, I can say with confidence, yeah, that I feel comfortable in my body and have like full permission for it to change and evolve as needed throughout my recovery. And I also think it's important to highlight too that I like have a lot of privilege in my identity and like the body that I recovered into, being able to shop in stores and, like going out and doing all of those things, I do think is a real privilege that I hold. So I always want to name that too, that like it's part of my experience. Um, yeah, I love this question because I think it's one that's so hard to talk about, especially like in early stages of recovery or even just like throughout the like first couple of years of being like, is this worth it? Will I ever feel this way? And today I can say that I do. So I'm happy to share that.
Okay, I can go, Evie and Carly. You're so quiet. You can- Um, yeah, I love everything you said, Lydia, and I really resonate with so much of that. Um, I think comfort in your body. I in my early recovery, I just had to like close my eyes and grit my teeth and just go through the motions because I did not feel comfortable in my body at all. And I think that was the last thing that came, if we even call it comfort. I think I felt really judgmental of my body. It was changing as I recovered, which like constantly, and it was finding a new set point, and it was physically uncomfortable, like with digestion. I didn't like the way it looked. It was all of it. Um, and I don't think there was like a day that magically came where I looked in the mirror and I went, "You're so beautiful." Like it did not happen. Or all of my digestive problems, all of a sudden went away. I think what was really interesting to me in recovery is that my relationship with my body changed significantly. So in terms of how I looked, I was so fixated on that for a long time. And what happened is kind of that interest in how my body appeared loosened up a lot, and I was much more interested in the life my body was allowing me to live, particularly because I'd been, I was in a position of disability as a result of my eating disorder. So I couldn't walk, I couldn't do that. So I tried to really focus on being able to walk again. I got into yoga, and like one of the joys I took in my body was being able to do a crow pose for the first time and like hold my own body up. It just felt like, wow, there's strength there. And I might not have looked like how I looked, but I was starting to develop a different relationship with my body. And I started to try to eat in ways that really supported my body to live, meaning be able to digest food well without being fatigued and uncomfortable and all of that. And I think I really just tried to invest my energy in that. They call it body functionality, is really just focus on that. And over time, I mean, I now look in the mirror and I don't hate it or love it. I just go, yeah. I mean, I don't dislike it. I'm like, yeah, all right. This is how I look. It's become so much less important than can I walk up a flight of stairs? Can I pick up my nephew and hold him close to my chest? Can I get through a day without having an awful stomach ache? Do I have energy in the morning? So I think I'm very comfortable in my body. I'm very at ease in my body, but I think that came partially because the things that had been very important in the middle of my eating disorder were way less important years down the line. And I don't know how that happened, to be honest. I could try to tell you, it was time and work, but I wish I could give you like a magic way to just flip that switch because it wasn't like willful. It happened just very slowly. Um, I don't know, Evie, Carla, how's it for you?
Yeah, I'm not sure I would ever use the word comfortable at this point. I think I would prefer to use like appreciative, especially when I'm doing something that my body allows me to do now. So, because I love running and when I get to be with my friends and like running with them, it's very much, oh, it's like a moment of I get to have this body, it gets to do these things for me, and that's a really nice feeling. Like there are times where I suddenly like the bad thoughts come back. It's like, why did you look like this and why that? Like at the weekend, I went swimming with my friends and I was like, oh my God, this is the worst thing in the world. Why have I done this? But actually, I was like, I get to be here and my body can do this. And I think it was more changing the script of I want to look a certain way to I want to be able to do things, a bit like Chelsea said.
I agree with what everybody has said. And for me, I feel like I'm still an infant toddler in this recovery process, but I can say that there are more days I can look in the mirror and appreciate my body and even find something I can tell it that it's positive or even a compliment sometimes where I couldn't have done that before. So I think body image is the hardest part. The eating part was so easy. I mean, in retrospect, was so much easier than trying to adapt and to accept and to appreciate how our bodies change. And I have to keep reminding myself in this process that my body is just going back to where it was before this catastrophe happened, you know? And so my body is just restoring to where it was. It's not it's not adding or anything else. It's just getting back. It's getting to its comfort zone. So I have to learn to appreciate that.
Beautiful. I see more questions. You guys are making our job so easy today. It's more- This is great. They're really good questions. I'm just going to go in order. Um, I am in recovery, but I have frequent short-lived relapses. What do you do when there's a stressful, difficult situation and you feel like you're going to relapse? Also, if you have neurodiversity or comorbid mental health conditions, which also makes things difficult day to day. So how are you dealing with those? I mean, I'm hearing two things there. Like you feel like you're going to relapse, so self-doubt, self-trust, like, oh, and then the stressful, difficult situations, particularly when it can be exacerbated by anxiety, neurodiversity, maybe maybe sensitivities to sensory stimuli, all of those bits.
I think when I feel like at my lowest and bad things happen, it's really helpful to have a support network so I know who I can call upon. I've told people about my past, even some of those people were there with me throughout it, and then others I've met since, and they're all very understanding. And when I need them, they will be there. And I've told them how to help me and how not to. So it's like educating the people around you can be very important because not many people understand eating disorders. And like with neurodiversity, so I also have ADHD. So it can make you like quite impulsive, like just to doing things that sometimes when I was like not recovered, I like it would help almost like just keep me distracted from food in a way. Um, which I found the biggest issue was like keeping a schedule. So like with that in mind, I would like write things out and set alarms on my phone so I could definitely stay focused on what I was doing more.
The support network around it is like such a big thing. Evie, I'm so glad that you brought that up. That too has me been like the biggest thing is like making sure that I have like I view like a support as like a continuum where I'm like I know that I'm always going to need support. It just matters like the amount of support that I'll need at different times. So throughout my recovery, I always think it's like really helpful to note that I'm like life doesn't get easier. I just have become like, at least my life did not become easier necessarily. It just became that I was able to handle situations that came at me from a more level place rather than like a high reactivity place. Um, so I know that like I've had tons of loss in my life. Specifically, I lost my mom throughout like my recovery due to complications of her eating disorder. And that was a time where I was like, oh, this is going to for sure be an area that I am holding a lot of fear around and really like question my ability to stay in recovery after that. And I knew that I had to ramp up my support. So on the little continuum, I like moved my little lever on the higher support end and made sure that I was attending groups, had a therapist, had a dietitian, had all of the people in there, my family members that could support me, my friends, and brought in everyone and was very communicative about like, hey, I'm worried about like where I'm at, and I just want to make sure like I am motivated to stay on track, and also that feels really hard right now. So making sure all of those are in place for when and if hard things happen, because like again, my life didn't get easier. I became better at handling things. And I also have ADHD and co-occurring mental health conditions. So absolutely those make it harder day to day to add in additional things to be monitoring. And I think that the support helps in those same ways. So just talking about it, being communicative, being honest with myself about how those are impacting things, and making sure that I'm checking in and giving space for each of the areas of my mental health that need to be given attention to. They're not something that I see as being like challenges necessarily. It's much more like, oh, these are just additional parts of me that also need love and support. And we're just going to have to ramp that up right now. But really viewing it as like a support continuum allows there for like in my brain to be flexibility and not as much like shame or guilt around needing more support, but saying like, yeah, everyone's going to go through hard times. My brain is just wired to react in a way that might not be long-term serving for me to escape this discomfort right now. So really, really great question.
I just want to echo everybody. Support is necessary. And the thing about support for me was I built my network. So I know the capacity of each person in it and who I can call when certain things are going on. So I think support network is very vital. And the thing about eating disorders too is we do have to educate people because people don't, they're clueless, honestly, because they look at people and just because your body don't look a certain way, then you don't have an eating disorder. So I think there's a lot of educating in building support too.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to, I think on the community front, it's really interesting. I was talking to a friend about this the other day. This is probably too much information, but I'll just say it. I had a really weird dream like a few weeks ago, and it was like a relapse dream, except like my body had changed significantly. Like I was much bigger than I was, and in my dream, I was panicked about it. Like, and you know how dreams can be, like it feels really real, and you wake up with all the emotions about it. And I woke up and like I was still swimming in the emotions of that. And I was like kind of just shocked by I've never had one of those. But like my body was just changed and I was, really freaked out about it in the dream and all of the eating disorder stuff. And I had this moment where I was like, God, like I don't know, I just had like a moment of self-doubt. Like, oh, is my unconscious telling me something that they've got like fears of this and it's connected with a health issue. So there's like there's something to it. I'll just say it felt very real and very kind of and I had this moment where I thought like could I relapse? Like is that something because again it felt so real and all of the emotions were there. And I thought, and I think this is part of what's kept me in recovery so long, is I thought of everyone on the Eat, Breathe, Thrive team, Evie and Corey, who's here, all of our facilitators, all of you who are here. And I think part of what's kept me in recovery is that linking up with other people, where my recovery is no longer just about me. And it's not like if I were to relapse, Lydia would be like, I am so disappointed in you, Chelsea. It's not, but do you know what I mean? Like and I'm sure you can see this in your own families and your social life. Like me relapsing isn't just about me. It has an effect on my partner, my cat who's just snuck in through the back, all of those things. And I think that's part of how I've particularly like over the years really kept quite solid there is recognizing that pain and suffering I'm feeling grows and grows when I let kind of those inner demons rule and it affects everyone and everything around me. And so yeah, I think it's I mean we call it service. Is having a sense of meaning and purpose beyond just me and knowing that I'm kind of linked up with that bigger system. It was a really bad dream. It was an awful. Yeah. Um, Lydia, do you want to pick a question? There's so many good ones in here.
I was just going right down the list what you were doing, but I'll read the next one.
Okay,
Um,
thanks.
has anyone on the panel, apart from Chelsea, who mentioned it in a previous session, struggled with chronic gut issues in recovery? As I really believe full recovery is possible, but I'm so held back in recovery with chronic gut issues despite doing my best and trying so many different things. I'd like to open this up, I think, too, from specifically like specific chronic gut issues, but any other chronic health conditions, because I do think that, like, of course, that's one piece of it. And there's so many other chronic conditions that can also be paired with the eating disorder. So just maybe to speak to, yeah, how we've navigated like eating disorder recovery plus like other chronic illnesses or areas of care that we've navigated. I think that'd be really great.
Well, we know I've said it in a previous one, so somebody else has to go.
Mental illness, I do have
Okay,
some. Oh,
go
I
ahead.
do have some, okay, I do have some other, I don't have specific gut issues, but I do have other chronic health conditions that I navigate. And what's been really helpful for me in this process is just coming back to like I'm doing the best that I can with the circumstances that I have and really readjusting my expectations for myself and my own recovery and not seeing it as something that I need to be like, I'm all like, I have to be perfect at this. I have to be doing everything the right way of what recovery looks like in my mind, and be much more flexible with it and saying like, I'm going to meet myself wherever I'm at, like, and knowing that that could change day to day. Is that easy to do? Absolutely not. It's one of the hardest things to have that like compassion built in, which is like, I can say that it's built in now better than it was. It's still something I think that like self compassion is going to be a lifelong practice for me, but much more like easier to do whenever I would be like, okay, I'm feeling this way and like recovery feels really hard today, and saying like, oh, of course it does. Like this is happening on top of that. And like if I'm doing like recovery in and of itself is hard, add on any other chronic health condition, and that's going to make it even harder to move through. So reminding myself that like I'm doing the best I can with what I'm working with, and that's okay for today. And really bringing it back to like day at a time and checking in with myself to see where I'm at, with things, but really bringing in that self compassion and acceptance for just how things are in that moment, and not doing my best to regulate my expectations and make sure that I'm not saying like my recovery needs to feel or look a certain way, because that's how I know that I'll have made it. Because it's much more like Carla mentioned earlier, like a journey and something to like that I'm like working towards always.
I think like I'm at the doctors now a lot because there's something that they're trying to figure out that's chronic, but no one has any clue. Um, Amazing. But essentially, like the symptoms that started during my eating disorder, but no one would ever believe me that anything was wrong, which was like really sad. I was telling them that it wasn't connected to my eating, and everyone was determined that it was. And even now, I find myself having to fight every like medical professional I see. And I just think it's taught me a lot about like self-advocacy and how much you have to, especially in healthcare systems. I'm British, so the NHS, if you don't tell them what you want, then they basically don't give it to you. So I think that's it's taught me.
Carla, do you have anything to add to this one, or should I go to the next?
I to navigate a autoimmune disease with my eating
Mm.
disorder. And when I first got diagnosed, the hardest thing to do was to not blame myself for this autoimmune disease that had nothing to do with my eating disorder. But there's days that are, and I did have some, gastro issues. And I too had a doctor, a rheumatologist who didn't believe what I was telling him. And it caused me to have two back to back pretty serious surgeries back in 2023. Um, so yeah, it's hard to navigate, and then I'm still learning the compassion thing. I can have compassion for everybody and anybody else, but to turn it towards myself feels selfish, and so I'm still learning that part. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is all the more difficult when it's an eating disorder, and I think any chronic health issue, but particularly with gut issues, it's like the very thing that you need to do, which is, you know, eat every day. We all have to do that. When you've got a difficult issues, it makes it much, much more difficult. I'm gonna go to the next one here. How do you get through the early stages of recovery to get to a place when the eating disorder thoughts are quieter and the dark shadow of eating disorder is less powerful with bullying? So how do you get there? Um, Powerful with bullying you into engaging in behaviors. Every time I managed to get to recovery, I sadly lapsed in the early stages because the work involved stay in recovery was more difficult than I had expected. In the early stages of recovery, the eating disorder thoughts were even louder than when I was not in recovery. So good. Okay.
I think you have to have some accountability outside of yourself. Um, so for years, people have been telling me like, just give it like this much time, just do it, like you'll stay in it. And I'd never done it. And when I finally decided that I wanted to go in this all-in recovery, as people sometimes call it, I was like, I'm going to post on social media, like not triggering content. I'm just going to keep myself accountable, be like, okay, this is my thoughts today, and share it with the world. And eventually, as those accounts grew, there was more and more people who were supporting me in my network, and also just I felt like I was doing it for them and for myself. And if I suddenly didn't post, I was like, what would they think of me? And like becoming a volunteer with Eat, Breathe, Thrive was amazing because I have this whole team of people who I know looking out for me and care for me. And just having those people that understand is just amazing.
Yeah, I love that you pointed. I mean, one, I just love that yeah, we are looking out for you and we do care for you. And you're such a bright light and lighting up our social media now too, Evie. But I love that you said accountability like that. I resonate so much with that. I mean, I think I've told this story on here before, but early in my recovery, I had a friend who was doing something. She had another health issue, it had nothing to do with an eating disorder, and I just really like I wanted to do something differently. Like, I was not happy having an eating disorder, but I'd had it for years. And I think, like this person who's shared this, there got to a point in early recovery where it was so hard. It was just, I just, I could, like, when the rubber met the road, it was not, I did not have the willpower to will myself into it. I just could, like, I couldn't. I just always won. The other thing always won. And I think that part of that is like the habits and modes of thought are so, like deeply entrenched once you've had an eating disorder for a long time, of how you eat, how you relate to your body. And it's just like, I used to picture it as like, if you walk down a path over and over again, it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And it felt like it was like down and I just couldn't like get onto another path. There was nothing. And it was another person that was that accountability of having another human being that, like, I don't know if we extend that metaphor, like threw a rope down and helped me get to another path every day and start wearing down another path. And it was a breakfast buddy. Like I just struggled. I didn't like to eat breakfast. And like for a month, we each made a commitment to something. And mine was to have a bagel for breakfast every day. And it sounds small, but that was a big deal for me in that moment. And every morning we would go to yoga practice and then we would go and have breakfast. And she did her thing. It was a completely different commitment. But that accountability for those first 30 days of starting to build that path made it much easier to get out of that ditch on my own. But that's not to say, 30 days is going to do it. But I think having other human beings there to keep you accountable, and that requires a big level of vulnerability. I will say that this was a friend that, I didn't tell anybody I'd had an eating disorder, and I had to really open up about that with her. And she was awesome. She was a safe person to do that with. So
Chelsea, I really love that too, like bringing in that someone else that like didn't maybe struggle with the same condition or like even saying like maybe it wasn't even a mental health condition, but still saying that like we can be accountability buddies with someone that's like also working on a different goal and that like support doesn't always have to look like someone else has been through the same thing or someone that's doing the same exact thing as us, but just knowing that like we're working alongside someone else also striving to make changes. I think that's really important to highlight because I think that can also perpetuate like the cycle sometimes being like, well, no one understands me. But even if you're like, this person might not fully understand me, and also they can show up like for me in this way. That's really beautiful. Accountability too for me, huge. I have had like therapists throughout my whole journey of like always having someone available to chat with, dietitian on and off throughout, like as needed, and just having those people to check in with around it. Because there is like, yeah, when we can't talk about it and like the isolation comes back up, or if there are like scary thoughts, like having people that you can reach out to be like, yes, this is happening. And like, I think I've talked about this too before of like, I've like really worked with my sister. Like we like kind of trained ourselves how to have like a really like strict dialogue when things were coming up of how to be like, this is what's helpful to hear, this is what's not helpful to hear. But we really worked with each other to be like, how can we make sure that like when the dark thoughts, when the shadows come up, like how can I push through it? And I know that like my belief was that I was like, I can't do it alone. And I want other people to help me because I think that it would be so scary for me to try to navigate all of those thoughts by myself. I had one other thing that I wanted to say about it. Also that like when I was pushing back against the eating disorder thoughts, like early on, like it was so much harder. It felt like in recovery because it was like taking active, like mental energy to have to combat the thoughts. So it was often way harder. And I was like, well, it's just easier to be in the eating disorder if it's going to be like harder for me to fight back. But then slowly it like the power like switched. The more that I pushed back on it, it became like that the slowly but surely the power switched to being like the recovery was starting to pull harder than the eating disorder. But it took through getting through that stage. Um, there was still something else that I wanted to say, but maybe it'll come back to me. So, Carla, if you want to pop in, I'll be listening, but also thinking about what else is on my mind.
I want to speak especially to the eating disorder voice because um, it got very loud for me the last few days because I'm doing this has actually been a long time dream of mine. And I had a therapist I saw for over 20 years. And even at my worst, I was like, I'm going to be out there one day helping somebody else to get better. I want to go with you. And so the eating disorder, that voice over the last few days was horrific. But I somehow was able to navigate and it didn't win. I did what I needed to do. Self-care was so much more important these last few days than it had been. And I was able to, I did it. I made it here. And all the lies that the eating disorder voice was throwing at me, nobody wants to hear what you have to say, or who cares, um, you know what? People do need to hear because recovery is possible and it looks different for everybody. But I personally struggled over 40 years and I am seeing recovery before the end of my life. Just hold on. Just keep fighting. Find somebody that's going to help you yell at those voices that come in your head. That's what support and that's what community sometimes it takes an army. So build your army, and go in. Don't go in as a victim or, just automatically waving the flag that I surrender. Don't, yeah, those voices are loud. And I look forward to the day where they're a little quieter or that I don't even notice that they're there. So
My thoughts came back to me within like the first 2 minutes, Carla. Not 2 minutes, the first 2 seconds of what you were saying. So I fully listened and I had my thoughts circle back. Um, Another thing that was really helpful for me in those early stages was I really love acceptance and commitment based therapy. So ACT and having values that really resonated with me. And anytime that I had like a strong like eating disorder thought come in, that I would be able to say like, would engaging in this behavior move me towards my value of connection, or would it move me away from? And really breaking it down to like that equation of like, okay, if I move in this direction, which way is it going to move me on like my little game board of recovery? And oftentimes the eating disorder behaviors were leading me away from my values. So having those things like pretty concrete in my mind of what to come back to, because I knew that there was going to be things that were going to try to pull me off of my like path and back into the trenches, like Chelsea was saying. So having my values really helpful. And I'm actually going to do a values card sort soon to get reestablished with my values. I feel like some things are moving, which is exciting. But then also I feel like too, especially as what I've witnessed from talking with so many people throughout their recovery, is also like once we're not engaging in the eating disorder behaviors to numb things, like I feel like some of the unearthed or like untouched trauma that we've been through in different stages can start to pop up louder because we're not numbing it or using an eating disorder to like conceal any of the hard things that we've been through. So I also feel like that's been something that I've witnessed a lot is like, yeah, other things are going to bubble up. So also having people to support us on that side too, and having like, if trauma therapy is necessary, if doing a trauma program, any of these things that can help like kind of work through whatever's coming up. I think making space for that too, and knowing that like if we're taking care of our bodies and able to be like in respect with them, then that gives us the space to be able to process through some of that like deeper work that might need to be done to help progress in in our recovery. So I want to offer that too, just from like what I've witnessed and with the work that I know I've been able to do because I've been in recovery throughout navigating it. Thanks for letting me take up more space with that one. I had a lot of thoughts.
Oh, I love that. And I just want to say, Carla, such a powerful share. And I wrote down what you said. I love that you said, I am going to see recovery before the end of my life. I just think that's so beautiful and powerful. So thank you for that. Um, there's so many questions, so we might have to like try to go popcorn a little bit like for these, but there's some really good ones here. What would you say to someone who wants to move to the next stage of recovery? For me, looking in the mirror, wearing clothes that actually fit my body, etc., but is scared.
I'm going to
I,
chime in on this one, if
yeah,
it's okay.
yeah.
It's something that I have said, and Lydia's probably heard me say this a billion times in groups. Um, do it afraid. Face the fear head on. Do it afraid. That would be my advice, my suggestion, my whatever.
Yeah. I love that. Do it afraid. I mean, I don't know that there's another way to do recovery, to be honest. So I love that. I would add because I think you spoke a little bit to the body stuff, looking in the mirror, wearing clothes that actually fit my body. And I'm going to combine this next question, which is I'm having a hard time with my body image and I feel like I have to dissociate just to get out the door. Do you have suggestions for healthy coping while in recovery? So like others can respond to that one as well. But I think to the first and the second question, particularly around looking in the mirror, wearing clothes that actually fit my body. I I mean, I always think that I'm like very scientific and I am, like I am, but there's some woo inside deep down if you know me well enough. And I had to do some rituals really to like because it was like a rite of passage, moving from one stage of my life to another. And like you're saying, that is like changing what you wear. You've got to do that. You've got to do all those things. So I would wonder if you sound like you're in that preparedness phase of like, I want to move to the next stage of recovery. And so I wonder about some tangible things to help you mark that transition. For me, it was, and I've probably said it in here before, I did not just get rid of my scale. I crushed my scale. I took it outside, I crushed it into tiny little pieces, and then I burned it in a barbecue pit. And I have never, ever weighed myself again. I went to the doctor the other day. They need to weigh me. And I said, great, you weigh me. I am looking the other way and I don't want to hear it and don't put it. And that's just been my policy ever since. Not that I couldn't have a healthy relationship with that number now. It's just been my worth is not measured by a number. Good for doctors to know it if they want to know it, but it's just not my measure of health or worth. So that's going to look different for you. I mean, I've had groups that we've done at Eat, Breathe, Thrive where they take all of their old clothes that they're moving and they cut it up into pieces and then they make like a purse out of it or like a rucksack. So there's all kinds of things you can do, but I would wonder about making some of those experiences tangible. What can you do with your mirror? Maybe it's writing some notes, maybe it's integrating a practice every day, but something to make that transition tangible and even fun, like cathartic. Get bring in other people, I think it's really an exciting place to be for you. And I would run toward it. you know I mean, if you're feeling okay with that, but I would just go like, how can you really not timidly go into it, but mark it, really tangibly.
I love everything you just said, all of you. Truly, I'm like trying to think. Like, I think the original piece and like really marking it as something that like I'm ready to do this, and like I put sticky notes all over like every surface. I think like where I was living, like just had like sticky notes everywhere, like reminders, because I do believe like that was part of it was for me was like retraining my brain of like, yeah, like I'm in this stage of recovery and I'm ready. I can feel like a sense of maybe not ready, but like willingness to change. and to make some differences. So if there is like that like little bit of a drive, leaning into that and making sure that like it's around, like making sure that it was around myself all of the time and coming back to it. And so like also validating like the when we are in those spaces of like, yeah, like leaving the house, like because I'm like so distressed in my body so hard. So that mean like I know I had sticky notes around. I saw sticky notes in my house growing up of like little positive affirmations that my mom had around, of just like right by the door, like a sticky note of like I am safe. Like I, trust myself to keep myself safe. Like I am more than my body. Like my body's the least interesting thing about me. I have that engraved on my iPad. It's like very much like these like things that I need to hear. I like surrounded myself with to help change my brain. So I just want to validate that. Like, and it's honestly, it's such a great question to ask too, of like, and just hearing someone say they were ready or like interested in taking the next step of their recovery, like that's such a powerful thing to just like name. So already starting from a beautiful space. But yeah, I surrounded myself with all the things to be able to make that change happen.
I love what you said about the scale, smashing the scale. And it really, it kind of came to me like yesterday. I was thinking my therapist is currently out until June. She had a baby, and my scale is currently at my dietitian's office. And I want to, when my therapist gets back, I think I'm ready. We've talked about the scale smashing party thing. And I think when she gets back, somehow, some way, my dietitian, me, and her, and even my old therapist, I hope, can all join in a Zoom because I really want to beat the crap out of that thing.
Yeah, I'll just say to that, like once you've crushed your scale with like a hammer, the idea of going back to a store and buying another scale feels really different. Once you've really like grah, there is something to ritual around that of, and it was scary. I wasn't like excited about it. I was like, wait a minute, I do this every single day, what am I gonna do? But I think that was what I needed to break that forever, really. I'm not going back to it. Come on, Evie, have you crushed your scale?
I never had a scale. I used to sneak
Okay.
into my doctor's office and go weigh myself, and now I have to sit in front of it every week, and I just tell myself, no, it's great.
That's good. And never having a scale is a good place to be with that too. Yeah. Oh, Lydia, we're down to like last minutes. You got to pick the last question, I think.
No, I was hoping you were going to do it.
Oh my
I didn't want to have
goodness.
hard to make you the last.
Well, this one's really unique and different. So I'm just gonna, and I haven't picked any. I've just kind of scrolled through and I've got, oh, that's a unique one. Is it common to move from one ED to another in recovery? And does that mean you're failing at recovering? Anybody? I mean, I'll just say that I know from the research alone that it's extremely common, and I know from hearing and speaking to people that it's really common. And I would say even with eating disorders and addiction, that is really common of going from one way of coping to another. And I certainly don't think you're failing at recovery. I think eating disorders are serve a lot of purposes in our lives around identity, all of those things. But one of those big ones that they serve is helping us cope with life, trauma, day to day, all of that. And I used to feel like, trying to recover from an eating disorder was like somebody stealing my most precious teddy bear that like got me to sleep every single night. And so I know self-compassion is really hard, but to me, someone taking away the teddy bear and then you reaching toward another soft item, I mean, you know what I mean? Like reaching toward a blanket. No, you're not failing. Like, of course, that is, what happens. Um, and so I think it just points that need to come back to like the core of what it is we're doing in recovery and shore yourself up with resources. How what do you think, what is it? What are those purposes the eating disorder is serving for you? How are you managing anxiety? How are you dealing with, is there untreated trauma there? All of those things and coming back to those core things. And it's part of the journey. And I think it can be really easy anytime there's a relapse or anytime we become aware, and really that should be celebrated. The fact that you've got that awareness at all, that's actually a sign that you're recovering. I think I would say is in that moment to get really curious about what's happening, give yourself some credit for catching yourself, and then coming back to community, coming back to therapy, coming back to all of those things. But I think it's incredibly common. um, yeah.
Yep. I also know it's really like common too for folks to struggle like when they're in an eating disorder to like pop around to different ones. And that's why oftentimes people are like, well, I don't feel like a specific diagnose fits because I struggle with so many of these different things, which in my brain too is just very much like, of course, like it's such a natural thing that if we have a like unbalanced relationship with like one area, it's makes sense that it would pop up in other areas too. And same with like I know the whack-a-mole like description of things is very common. So that's kind of how I view it too, of like, yeah, well, like when our body's adjusting from one form of an eating disorder, like it makes sense that another like different eating disorder symptom or behavior might pop up and like while you're trying to do it. So if anything, I feel like that means like we're moving farther along the more that like if other things are coming up and we're navigating through them, it's like I view it as like another whack-a-mole that we're just like, okay, gotta pop that one down and waiting to see if anything else pops up. But very common, and doesn't mean that we're failing. It means that there's other areas that we get to work on. I know it feels like sometimes I'm like, well, it's such a like outside perspective to say like it's an opportunity for us to be able to work through more things, but that really is the way that I see it, as like if we develop different symptoms, it's like that's just another data point of saying like, yeah, there's another area of opportunity to like show myself grace and compassion in this and like learn from what's underneath it. But definitely not a failing net recovery and very common. Great question.
I just wanted to add, like, you can't fail at recovery. Everyone's journey is completely different. If you relapse or if anything happens, it's not failing. You're trying and you're understanding, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, beautiful. Some people call it a learning point. I love that. Thank you. All right. Well, I think we are pretty close to close. I wonder, Lydia, you might have a couple items like this, but it's February, which means we're coming up on Eating Disorder Awareness Week. So I know at EBT we've got loads of free events. And Corey, who's here with us, will send you an email with some of those. But we've got Connect, Practice, Recover coming up for Eating Disorder Awareness Week. We have, for those of you who are at that place, we've got a 7-week course that will be completely free to attend. If you're at a good stage in recovery and it is one of those like I'm in recovery and I'm looking for tools to relate to my food in a different way, all of that, but you can read more information about it, and that's open. And then we always offer our 4-week courses, Yoga for Eating Disorder Recovery, for free. So get support. It's there, it's accessible, and it's even more so during February. But I don't know, Lydia, do you have any events, EDAW, coming up?
Yes, we are going to be doing a fundraiser for EDF during Eating Disorders Awareness Week. So we're going to have our Art for a Cause fundraiser where we had a bunch of folks donate art to us for us to auction off. So we're going to be doing that in person at the Eating Disorder Foundation on Thursday, February 26th, starting at 4 p.m. But we're also going to have a shop available on our website too for that. So really exciting to be able to share some artwork and connection and just, reinforce the work that we do here. So yeah.
Yay! And
Awesome.
we have another How We Recover in May. We do these once a quarter, so you can sign up. You don't have to wait to sign up. I think it's May 19th, but we will get that out by email as well, so you can sign up for the next one. And we hope to see you there. And thank you for your amazing questions. It's so hard to think of questions. So thank you for giving us so many good ones. It was really wonderful, and it was nice to see you all today.
Yes, great to see everyone. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for being a part of the conversation today. And I hope that's what it feels like for everyone is like we're here wanting to talk with everyone. And I feel like the way that everyone's been showing up as a community to ask these questions is such a gift for us to be able to communicate about it, for y'all to be able to ask what's on your minds. So thank you to everyone who's been here. Thank you, Carla, Chelsea, and Evie. Evie, wonderful to meet you. Grateful to have you here. Carla, thanks for doing this for your first time. Yeah, thanks everyone.
Amazing. Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.